comes to the intel portion of the call, which is now, we usually have quite a bit of information to give you, and I do my best to put that out with as much detail as I can remember, since I don't write any of this down. And so what it is now is we're in a situation where we are so close to the blessing coming to fruition that there's very little active intel really that's out there. There are a few things here and there, and some things are just a little too sensitive to go into. And we have been asked tonight not to really do much of an intel segment at all. And I believe this is a trend from what I'm hearing from a few other calls that I'm familiar with. So what I'm thinking is to just tell you guys that we are at a position where we are, I believe, by what I have heard, so close that we don't want to say anything that might jeopardize our position in this waiting process. When we're asked not to really discuss much, I think we should take that to mean we are very, very close, and we are essentially right there. I can tell you from many perspectives, everything is done. I can just tell you that, there may be some announcements coming here in the very near future that we're looking for, but overall, a lot has happened behind the scenes, and we are just in the right place at the right time. So I'm going to tell you that rather than get into the play-by-play on the intel, trust me to believe that we are in a really good position right now to just stay virtually quiet. And I'm going to tell you some things that everybody has heard maybe, but I think we're just going to review some of the things that we want to do in terms of our humanitarian projects. And I want to start with the veterans. Guys, we know that, for example, the veterans are committing suicide in this country somewhere between 20 and 22 per day in this country, from what the stats that I'm hearing. That's really sad, and we have a plan to try to help mediate that and to try to get that number way down. And that's part of our Veterans Retreat Network outreach program. And the Veterans Retreat Network has a component that I came up with called Streets to Retreat. And this is the concept of trying to take the homeless veterans off of the street, to offer them housing, to offer them food, to offer them medical care or arrange medical care through the local clinics that are in the area, and try to offer them job training or jobs at the actual residence where they would be living. And we're going to rehab a number of these, I'm going to call them motels and apartment house type buildings. We're going to start probably in one or two cities, and seeing how the project goes. We'll try to expand it all around the country, where we can take veterans and essentially graduate them from coming off the street into a housing and trying to get them back into some semblance of normalcy of life, and then take them from those apartment houses and motels to our retreats, and where they could be given more training. And these will be jobs that'll be good jobs. These won't be low-paying minimum wage jobs. These will be decent wage-earning jobs. And we want to do that at our retreats. We want to offer PTSD counseling, not only for the veteran themselves, but also for the family. Make it a family situation as needed. And then we're going to try to employ as many veterans as we can. We really do see ourselves as the largest employer of veterans in the country. We've got a number of retreat sites picked out. We have a listenership through the big call of 85 different people that talked about uh, buying land and buying ranches and so on that we would use a portion of a certain amount of acres for our retreats. That was 3 years ago or so when we talked about that. And we have quite a few that we've been in touch with in the past about that. And we'll continue to work with those people in those areas. The format may change somewhat because, to be honest, the money has changed quite a bit. With the ability for the Zim to be worth so much with privately negotiable rates, it sort of gives us a lot more opportunity to purchase these properties and have them owned outright by the Veterans Retreat Network. So we're looking into that as well. But just be conscious of the fact that we're looking to offer the veterans a really nice program and vacation time as well on a number of these retreats. We've got plans for using equine therapy, also canine therapy for our veterans. And if you are a person that loves horses and maybe raises horses or has horses now on your ranch, I know that we have a few that we've talked with in the past on the big call that I've talked to. There may be a few more. That's the kind of thing that we'll probably need a little help with, bringing our own people from the big call in to work with us in that area. And we want to have full-fledged retreats that offer not only all the recreational venues you can think of except golf. The only reason we won't have golf is we hope to be close enough to where veterans can play on daily fee type golf courses and get either a very minimal rate to play or a free opportunity to play some of the courses that might be 20 to 30 minutes away from our retreats. And I know some of the retreats are positioned where we can do that. We do kind of plan to have a golf practice facility, though, on a number of our retreats. And so we want to entertain the concept of basically a lot of different sports, obviously fishing and hunting on some of our retreats, and just the ability to create a serene pastoral type atmosphere for our veterans and their families to enjoy vacation time. We've got a similar concept for our pastoral retreat network, our PRN, which is to help visiting pastors, missionaries, people that are doing that work for the gospel, for Jesus Christ throughout the country, that come in for hiatus, come in off of the field to give them a place of respite, a place to get some R&R and to be able to do some planning or possibly fundraising for the next year as they go back to the mission field. We want to be that safe place, a place of refuge, and a place that they can come with their families and have a vacation on us. We want to do that, and so far we had, I believe, 16 to 20 of those pastoral retreats selected for the U.S. We also had a couple of properties in the Caribbean, I believe, and one in South Florida as well. That would give us that opportunity. And that's an area that we'll expand on as well, I'm sure, because I think that's a really important thing to do for the people that are called to preach the gospel and to take ministry, like Pastor Stephen is called, to take it to Central America. He just got back from a trip Monday to Costa Rica, which was a 5-day trip, where he was very effective in preaching and laying on hands for people. That's the kind of situation we want to have for visiting pastors and missionaries throughout the country. we want to be involved in that. In terms of ministries that we want to support, of course, we'll support many ministries, but there's two that that we're in particular fond of. One is the Jerusalem Prayer Team. We know that, he who blesses Israel shall be blessed, and he who curses Israel shall be cursed. Well, we want to be on the side of blessing. And so that's one that Kent is deeply involved in, and we want to work with Kent and others in that area. And we also know that the Voice of China in Asia, VOCA, is deeply involved in handing out Bibles that are actually printed in China in 2 different cities, and the distribution of Bibles throughout China, canton by canton, if you will, province by province, is going on, and we want to be part of that in a very big way. Those 2 ministries are ones that we've talked about in the past, and we'll continue to talk about those in the future. But when it comes to doing other types of humanitarian projects, guys, we've talked for a long time about trying to offer food and water as basic necessities. There are a lot of places around the world that don't have good potable drinking water, that don't have good sewage either. We know of these places. We want to make sure that we're involved in those as well. And if they occur in the United States, we're going to be there too doing the same thing. Bob has direct ties to people that have extremely good water filtration systems. We can work with that company and involve ourselves with that as well. And so that's another area that we want to work with. And then the idea of actually raising food using aquaponics, the idea of combining fish farming, using gardening as well in a symbiotic relationship to raise vegetables in sort of a greenhouse atmosphere using grow beds and fish tanks to supply the fish emulsion as fertilizer for the vegetables, and also vermiponics, meaning using worms, which not only feed the fish, but the worm castings are also something that's used as fertilizer in the grow beds. And that's, even with my limited understanding of this, I think that is something that we'll do in many parts of the country. We also want to take that concept and get into community gardens, which may not be using aquaponics, but using normal type of seasonal gardening in the inner city. And we plan to do that in as many cities as we can set that up. That would be considered part of our Rebuild America. That would be one part of it. That's where we want to involve the local churches. We want to involve the local neighborhoods and communities to essentially build these with some help, and so that these people get an education of what it is we're trying to do, so that when we leave that area, in terms of the gardening, for example, the community gardens, that we have responsible people that can take over and manage that and keep it going and keep it working. Initially, I thought it would be a great thing for the community churches, the country churches, the ones out in the boonies, to have these community gardens, because that automatically gives them an opportunity to have a storehouse ministry of food if they don't already have one at their little local churches. And they can raise this food on their own property if possible, which might be land that the church has. And then the church can be involved in the distribution of this food like a food bank. And of course, if the churches are large enough and they have the capacity, or they have the ability for us to help them build a food bank storage center, we can also be involved in that. That's another agenda of making America great again. And my belief is that we can do that with help from our listeners on the big call. by having well over 5,000 people from the big call work with us, I felt like if we started with a number of 5,000, that would be one wherever our listenership is comfortable. As far as I'm concerned, it's helpful no matter whether it's a small town community with one stoplight. All the communities, it'll all help. It'll all help. Some of the areas need help on housing. That's a big concern for us to get the housing level up and to raise the bar and level that place. Veterans working in areas where they want that are going to school there. And I also think there's opportunity for building clinics. I like that architecture. I wonder if that'll work here. And you guys can take a look at what we're doing and be in touch with us through a new website, a new portal, and we'll be doing new calls in the future in terms of resuming calls on such and such a date at such and such a time. You could see a message like that. Obviously, check the call for information about the 800 numbers or anything else that we might have to